I hope it will be a fruitful kind of going through the process, what I'll be talking in my talk today about lymphedema. It's been around now 15 years I've been practicing lymphedema, and I'm lucky to be in the organizations where oncology is really good. So it's almost every alternate day before the lockdown, I definitely had a patient working on them for lymphedema. So I would like to, before taking much time, I would like to start with it. uh, I thought of the topic putting it as a little known entity. We all know about it, but sometimes we are a little confused. To my information, I have found that so many times when the patients are in ICU or something, there is swelling. The doctor may say, "What swelling here?" We think what it is. So, what you can do for it. So now, if we find some swelling, lot of the indications what we hear from people or the patients is pain, swelling, discomfort, maybe disfigurement. So, how do we really find it that it is lymphedema? Edema, a normal swelling, we all know can happen because of many things. The swelling can be pertaining to DVT, but the difference would be we all do Homan signs, which is positive, then we say it is DVT. Though edema and lymphedema in DVT and in lymphedema, it may be unilateral. But if the edema is bilateral, it can be a patient hypertensive on medication getting into heart failure, congestive heart failure, may develop swelling. But then the symptom may be different. There is something like dyspnea, nocturnal dyspnea, or dyspnea on exertion, or while lying down. So we can differentiate whether it is lymphedema or edema. Similarly, when we say it is venous insufficiency, the history the patient would give would be very different. That when I travel or sit for long, I do not fit into my shoes or I find my feet swollen. So we can differentiate there that it is venous insufficiency. There may be many other signs and symptoms. So I thought I'll initiate with this first of all. If I feel that this swelling, can I do something about it or can I not do something about it? So we'll go through the journey and find that are we really getting it that what I'm going to do and what I cannot do. By definition, if we are going to talk about lymphedema, it is nothing but, as you can see in the picture, it is the abnormal accumulation of fluid, which is protein rich, into the interstitial or the tissue spaces, which causes chronic inflammation and in the longer run, reactive fibrosis to the affected area. Generally, it is found in extremity, but it can be even in genitals, even in head and neck areas as well, abdomen. Extremities, yes, we can see here, which is very, very common in breast cancer related edemas, but there can be various other reasons with which lymphedema can occur. Incidence, if we find about breast cancer, though this is a little older study, but it talked of 23% had mild edema, 12% moderate, and 2% having severe edema. And we all know axillary lymph node dissection, which we call at, which is generally happening in when the cancer is involving more than one lymph node. They may have to clear all the three layers. That time the incidence is way higher than sentinel lymph node. Recent study talks about that 1 in 5 women who survive breast cancer, they develop edema. Head and neck cancer, more than 90% of the patients, within 18 months of the treatment, they may develop internal, external, or the combined edema. And 37% of women treated with gynecological cancer, they may have within 12 months post-treatment, they may have the measurable evidence of lymphedema. So just to talk about edema, I thought we'll just run through or brush up our lymphatic system information. As we have circulatory system, we all know that is a two-way system, that blood goes down and comes up. Arteries and veins, they work together. In lymphatic system, it is just one-way system. From all the skin area, from all the interstitial spaces of the body, the fluid comes back to the heart. So basically, this system is an overflow mechanism which returns the circulating proteins and excess fluid volume from the tissues back to the heart. There are various organs of the lymphatic system, which we call as spleen, which I showed in the previous slide here. You can see spleen, tonsils, thymus gland here, and even our bone marrow. They are the part of lymphatic system, along with the lymph vessels and lymph nodes. They are small capillaries. The way it is seen here, they are in the dermal layer of our skin. These small capillaries are way above our vein and artery, and they connect through lymphatic vessels or pre-collectors and collectors, and finally get to the lymph node as seen here. And from there, it is basically sent to the subclavian vein. If you can see in this diagram, everything all through the lymph nodes here, this is cisterna chyli, and everything goes back into the long thoracic duct, or from the right duct, it just walks in. If we go little on physiology, these lymphatic vessels, they have valves inside them into their muscle tissue, and this valve acts as a pump. It flows the fluid up, and with our muscular activity, this one compartment is called, what's seen here is lymphangion, and we look for lymphangion motoricity, that how much this lymphangion contracts to take further the lymph fluid. And it works on the Stirling equilibrium equation, which just talks that at the capillary level, whatever little fluid which disseminates from the arterial end is taken, is reabsorbed back through the venous end. Whatever little is remaining in the tissue, our lymphatics, these green vessels are lymph capillaries, they just take it back to the system. And it's around 2 to 3 liters of lymph which is flowing in the body from all interstitial spaces, which gets back to the heart through our long thoracic duct. Now, if we talk of lymphedema, we can classify it as primary and secondary. Primary lymphedema, as we all know by the name, it is congenital. At times, it is, yes, during birth, whether there is something like hypoplasia or aplasia, it may manifest later in life. Something like Millery's disease, which is at birth, it is manifested, as you can see in the child here, that yes, the child, you can see one arm is swollen. Similarly, this Meiggs syndrome, which is also called as lymphedema precox, it is shown at puberty. And there is a thing like lymphedema tardum, which is manifested after the age of 35. Actually, to share with you all, my journey started about learning about lymphedema when I saw a patient of Meiggs syndrome. She came to me telling that one day I fit into my jeans, the other day my leg doesn't fit into my jeans. Her father came to me and asked me that. And I was not really clear that what answer do I give them. Though I had learned little bit of lymphedema from the people who traveled from abroad to Delhi, but this answer was not with me. And I said, maybe I can just guide you with few things, but I'm not sure. And that's where I started to think that I need to learn about it. So secondary lymphedema, we all are way aware. I believe filariasis way more in India or African countries. And there is a lot of information. In fact, to share with you, when I just joined that area where I did my certification, the moment I said I'm from India, the answer came, oh, filariasis. So we all know filariasis comes through an parasite, but we are going to talk about various other forms of secondary lymphedema, which can happen post-surgical, which can happen post-radiation therapy, or any trauma, or whenever there is some crash injury or there's scarring. It can happen post-infection, as I said. Filariasis is one of them, but cellulitis, erysipelas. These all infections can also be a precursor for lymphedema. Chronic venous insufficiency at times also. Obesity, of course, there's a lot of literature now talking of obesity related with edema. And self-induced is what we find at many places. People who are begging, they would just tie something hard on their thigh or their biceps area. And once it is squished so much over the days when it is kept, the arms get edematous. This is with a patient of breast cancer, post-cancer, she's edematous here. But how do we diagnose? We need to know a good history, that for how long the swelling is there, when did it happen, is there any surgery involved in that, or post-surgical, was there any, what do you call, radiation done or chemotherapy done, and is the swelling painful? So we need to take a good history to really understand that whether it is related to cancer or there is some other reason of this lymphedema. Once we label it through our history that it looks like lymphedema, then definitely one needs to inspect the skin, that how does it look? Is it warm, fierce, red, warm, all inflammatory signs are there, or are there any tissue changes? As I said that in the longer run, it affects the skin and have papillomas and hyperkeratosis. So we need to inspect the skin, how the skin is. On palpation, we see when we touch, there is a thing like Stemmer's sign. This Stemmer's sign is when you touch the skin or when you try to hold the skin here. The skin, as you can see, my skin, I can approximate it. But people with lymphedema, you cannot approximate a pinch. It will be squared. And if the edema is on the lower limb, then the toes are also squared. So you see them not a normal toe, but a squarish kind of a structure with a thickened skin. Here the pain may be there, may not be there. But of course, the roughness on the skin at times, even having other changes like they may not have hair on the skin over the time, longer time, when it is a lot of congested skin for a very, very long time. Other diagnostic tests also guide us or tell us that is how much, first is this lymphedema there or not, and second, how much is it. So few diagnostic tests, something like lymphoscintigraphy, which is lymphatic function test. This is done at various organizations to know, but as a physiotherapist, we just can do, I'll just further tell you that we work with something like arm measurement or volumetric measurement, but other tests patient get done is something like a Doppler to rule out DVT. CT or MRI also at times, because lymphedema may be also due to some secondary, a patient with cancer, a breast cancer, may not have edema, but suddenly the whole area starts getting bluish red and then there is edema. So that is again secondary cancer coming. So to rule out all that, MRI or CT scan would be needed. Perometry is another infrared optic electronic scanner, which is used in various hospitals in various cities or lymphedema centers, where they just calculate the volume of the body part. Again, NIR or near infrared fluorescence imaging is also done. They inject a dye and then they do the imaging to really find it. Bioimpedance spectrometry is also one of the things where the resistance in the flow is measured, and it is again measured taking with the other arm and said that how much is the impedance shown for the fluid to flow. This image what I have put is the recent app developed by one of the person in US, and they are planning just that doing this one can calculate. So getting influenced by NIR, that near infrared fluorescence imaging, they have developed an app with which one can really, it's an Android app, and one can really find out that what is the level of edema. For us as physiotherapists, what we do is we measure the limb with circumferential radius we take for the limb, and I prefer taking it at every 4 centimeters. through a measuring tape with which I can have the circumferential, I can find the circumferential difference later in the time, that how much is the change in the limb. And another thing is volumetric measurement, which is done by dipping it in a cylinder, which is little, at places it is done. But we in New Delhi, we in our center, we don't do that. I do the tape measurement to really find. And another, by definition, it is said we label something as lymphedema when the swelling of one arm is 2 centimeters or more than the other arm. So that is labeled as edema. Or less than that, we label it as pre-lymphodematous state. What are the characteristics? Lymphedema, when you take the history, the patient may come up that it was slowly coming up and gradually it is progressing. Initially, when the patients of breast cancer, they come to me, initially when we just talk to them on the last day of their, or the day of discharge, we give them a little preventive kind of a talk on lymphedema and tell them that if you feel anything like heaviness or swelling or your clothes don't fit, please do inform. So they hear and they go back, and one tends to forget. But what happens thereafter, the swelling may come and go. So we find it is a slow onset, but is progressive. And initially, in the initial stages, it has pitting in it. That when you press your finger, it gives a indent kind of a thing or a dent kind of a thing in the skin, which gradually recovers. Generally, it starts distally, but in many of the patients I've come across, it even starts from their chest wall in breast cancer patients and then comes up. As I was just talking, in these patients, we find the Stemmer's sign is positive. There is squaring of toes when you talk of lower extremity. And on the dorsum of foot and hand, you will find that there is swelling. There is a loss of ankle contour. Another thing I would like to just go back and say, lipidemia patients also show similar kind of swelling. But generally, lipidemia is lower extremity, we see that. We see that it is bilaterally present, and there the ankle contour or the dorsum of foot does not have swelling. So that is the way how we can differentiate whether it's lymphedema or lipidemia. Though with manual treatment, we can even work on lipidemia patients. But still to know that we can, and in the patients of lymphedema, cellulitis or bacterial infections are very, very common. In fact, it was said that people who develop cellulitis in breast cancer patients, they have nearly 70% of the incidence of having swelling post cellulitis. Or if they had very mild edema, it may just aggravate to a very heavy arm all of a sudden with redness and swelling. Other characteristics are there is a lot of discomfort. This is the excessive kind of stage 3 lymphedema, where you see a lot of skin changes, as you can see very much here, and lot of you can say the skin is hanging, it is pretty hard, discolored. So discomfort is quite common. Skin changes, as I said, hyperkeratosis and papillomas are there. Such skin, they are vulnerable to get cut and open and recurrent infection or ulceration. And all this, if somebody is dealing with all this, of course, it leads to a lot of emotional and social distress. Just to know, as I said, this is stage 3. Just to know, the International Society of Lymphology has put it into stages. Latency or pre-edematous status, when there is no visible edema and subjective complaint of heaviness and achiness is there. But on stage 1, you see, as you can see here, there is a small dent. This is pitting edema, and it reduces on elevation and the skin is breathable, no fibrosis is there. But when you go on stage 2, there is accumulation of this protein-rich fluid and pitting becomes progressively difficult. And the skin, you will find that it is fibrosis is occurring. Stage 3 is there, as we saw in the previous slide, that lymphocytic elephantitis also we call it, which is very, very common in filariasis patients people might have come across. So there the skin has fibrosis, sclerosis, papillomas and keratosis. As I was just talking,